Hello everyone. Okay, you're now watching part 2 of the reasons for the rise of Hitler. Okay, I tried to speak faster earlier, but the PowerPoint doesn't seem to catch very well, so I'm going to speak at a slower pace so that you can hear me clearly. Okay, so in the last lesson, we focused on part 1 of the reasons for the rise of Hitler, and we covered favorable circumstances. In today's lesson, we are going to be focusing on the other half, which is Hitler's leadership abilities. So we are going to look at what Hitler did and how Hitler portrayed himself such that he was able to garner the necessary support in order for him to rise to power. You will notice that the slides correspond to the information in your textbook. So in the event that you're confused, do go back to your textbook and try to understand. Okay, however, if you still don't understand, by all means approach me and ask me questions. Okay, let's begin. Reason number 1. The Nazi ideology as well as Hitler's promises. Hitler became the leader of a small political party called the German Workers' Party in 1920. Okay, later on, subsequently, it was renamed the Nazi Party. And the Nazi Party was seen as a very, very strong competitor to parties like the Communist Party, which was also part of the Weimar Republic. Remember, the Weimar Republic is a democracy, which means that there are many different parties inside, and the Nazi Party is one of them, the Communist Party is another one as well. So why did the Nazi ideology appeal to the people? Okay, let's go back to our 25 points. Some of the most important things that were mentioned was number 1, the union of all Germans to form Greater Germany. He also said that they're going to put an end to the Treaty of Versailles, which was something that the Germans hated because they felt that they didn't deserve it. Okay, he also promised that he's going to have more territories, more food, and living space for the people. And last but not least, he said that only those with German blood may be citizens. By default, he will exclude a lot of people, such as the Jews, even though technically they are German citizens. From his point of view, they are not seen as pure Aryans, and therefore they will be excluded. And these promises, the 25 points of the Nazi ideology, will appeal to quite a number of Germans because they resonate with what Hitler is saying. Okay, bear in mind, Germany was in devastation, and here you have somebody like Hitler promising that he's going to solve the problems. So naturally, there were people who supported him. What you see here is actually a Nazi poster, and it says, "Do not believe that other parties can save the Germany of misfortune." Do not believe that the other parties can save Germany of misfortune and misery. In fact, not only does he look down on the other parties, he makes them his own scapegoats, with the Jews being one of the most famous scapegoats, the November criminals, people who were supposedly blamed for causing Germany to lose during World War I, as well as the communists. So he put all the blame for Germany's problems on these different institutions, these different people, these different parties. And he was able to garner more support as he caused anger within the people. How and why did he target the Jews? Okay, he blamed them for being responsible for losing World War I, even though they were only 1% of the total population. Okay, he believed that the Jews were collaborating with the communists, and he said that the Jews are inferior compared to the Aryans. And if you look on the right side, what you see is a very, very typical anti-Semitism cartoon, okay, where you can see the Jewish man with his nose, okay, that is the stereotype of the Jew at that point of time, and he's being portrayed or seen as this very evil character who's giving poison mushroom to kids. So in general, Hitler portrayed the Jews as very evil people, and he really made use of them as scapegoats to garner more support from people who already had anti-Semitism views. Even as he was rising to power in the early 1920s, Hitler was tried for attempting to overthrow the Weimar government in what we call the Munich Beer Hall Putsch. You would have seen this earlier if you read your textbook, okay, on the first part of Reasons for the Rise of Hitler. But here's the thing. Even though he tried to overthrow the Weimar government, he was only given a 5-year sentence. And he was released after 9 months, which again shows you how ineffective and problematic the Weimar government is. Even their punishments are not really enforced very seriously. And this is what he had to say to the judge. Gentlemen, you will not be the one who will judge me. History will be the judge, and history will judge us as Germans who wanted only the good of their people and the fatherland, who fought and were willing to die. From here you can see how Hitler is trying to portray himself as somebody, as a personality, as a savior who's trying to save Germany and is good for Germany. Okay, and although initially people might have just seen him as a very mad person, over time the words that he said started to ring a bell amongst the people as people became more and more angry with the Weimar government. When he was in jail, he wrote his popular book called the Mein Kampf, okay, translated into My Struggle. And these are the 4 things that he's going to emphasize on. So you'll notice again that this corresponds with the 25 points. Okay, but I want to bring you to the idea of Lebensraum, the idea of living space. He says that he's going to make Germany more powerful by taking more territory so that they have more space to live. And also, point number 4, strong government. If anything, the Weimar government was seen as being very, very weak. Therefore, he told himself and his Nazi party members that he's going to rule Germany via a strong government, okay, where there is complete obedience to the leaders of the government. These are 2 pictures of him in prison. Okay, you can see how relaxed he is. He's reading a newspaper. He's pretty well dressed, and he even has interactions with fellow Nazis. So prison really was not really a punishment for him. It was just a moment for him to reflect and rethink and recalibrate how he's going to rule Germany. Okay, now point number 2. Okay, the other reason why Hitler is able to rise to power is because of his own charisma and oratorical skills. Okay, without a doubt, Hitler did have a gift for public speaking and he could talk for hours. Whatever he said, it was very mesmerizing. People were very captivated by what he said because they felt as if he understood the problems of the average German. And when he said that he's going to bring order back to Germany and the way that he said it was really very empowering. And I can understand why people sort of agreed with Hitler on certain arguments, okay, not all, but things like making Germany powerful again, considering what had just happened during Treaty of Versailles. I can understand why Germans were angry and wanted to support somebody as radical as Hitler. Okay, I'm not saying that what Hitler did was right, but there were parts of his 25 points that I guess if I was a German, I might agree with. So at this stage, I want you to pause this video. Okay, go to this YouTube link that you see on the slide or search for Nazi Germany under Hitler's spell. And I want you to watch a video about how a Hitler supporter views Hitler. Okay, once you are done, come back to this video and press play. Okay, I hope that you watched the video so you can really see, right? Look at how exaggerated his movements are and the thousands of people who are also obediently cheering him on. He really did have charisma. Okay, unfortunately, he didn't use the charisma appropriately. So now we move on to our third reason. Exploited the fear of communism. So what does exploited mean? Exploited means to make use of. Okay, remember, around this time period in the 1920s, 1930s, Russia was already communist. And people were able to see what Stalin was doing to his own people. In terms of the businessmen, their production, their factory lines were all taken away because they were owned by the state. And the kulaks, the landowners, they had to give away their land, or they had to surrender their land to the government as well. So having seen what communism was like in Russia, the businessmen and the farmers got very, very afraid. So Hitler, very smartly, knew that these are 2 groups of people who would support him, because he is anti-communist and he is very strongly anti-communist at that. So he went to them and said, look, if you support me, I will tame down the communists. And rightly so, okay, the businessmen, they decided to support him with money. And with this money, he was able to create his own private army called the SA. Okay, and the SA was very responsible for pressuring and pushing the communists down such that they were not as much of a threat to the Nazi party. Although the communists were very strong, okay, it proved to be in the end that Hitler and the Nazi party were a lot stronger because they were able to tame the communists down with his own personal army, and also because generally people didn't have a very good view of the communists. They were causing a lot of chaos in the country. Next reason, reorganization of the Nazi party. In the earlier years, when Hitler carried out the beer hall putsch, okay, he used force and ended up going to jail. So he realized this time round that it's not about using force. Okay, instead, he needed to rethink how he is going to persuade people to support him. And that's what he will do. When he's out of jail, he will reorganize the party and compete in the German election to win via legal means. Okay, but in terms of how legal they were, that's another question altogether. So these are some things that he will start establishing. Okay, he will increase the party membership. He will establish the stormtroopers, your army, the defense corps, and he will use a lot of propaganda. He will also set up youth organizations, and by 1933, he had 100,000 members. Okay, why youth? Because they are easy to brainwash. Okay, they are easy to make them become who you want them to be. So he was very, very cunning in the people that he approached. He also arranged a lot of large public meetings to increase the party membership and make himself be seen as a very, very strong candidate. What you see here is the SS, okay, Hitler's elite personal bodyguard. So they were expected to protect Hitler at all times. Okay, and you also have the SA. So the SA is his own personal army, and the SA was used to break up all the communist strikes and the communist problems. And by using the SA, Hitler was again able to garner support because he showed himself as a very strong leader. So, who voted for Hitler? Okay, you can tell from here that he appealed to almost every single class. Okay, whether they are workers, whether they are half wealthy, whether they are wealthy, whether they are businessmen, whether they are women, all of them could find some form of resonation in what Hitler is saying. They could understand and empathize with some things that Hitler said. Okay, of course, those people who were the Jews or those people who were the communists, okay, they wouldn't have voted for Hitler because they saw what was coming already. Next reason, he is very skillful at making deals with politicians. Okay, skillful, another word for strategic, at the same time he's also very smart. So in the 1930 elections, the Nazis only received 18% of the votes, which is relatively small, right? But within 2 years, the Nazis had received 37.3%. Okay, and this, if you think about it, it's really one-third, slightly more than one-third of the entire Weimar government. So if anybody needed to enforce a policy or create a policy, they needed the permission and the consideration of the Nazis. If the Nazis said no, it was almost as good as the policy cannot be carried out because they are such a huge stakeholder. And Hitler used this to his advantage by refusing to cooperate with any political parties unless he was offered the post of Chancellor. And Chancellor here refers to the head of the government. The president at that point of time, Hindenburg, he did not trust Hitler and refused his demands. So from here you can see, look at all the different parties that are part of the Reichstag/the German parliament. Okay, the Nazi party is exponentially increasing, and easily by March 1933, they are the most powerful party within the entire Weimar government. Although the Nazi Party was getting stronger, the president, Hindenburg, who you see on the right side, still did not trust Hitler, and therefore he appointed von Papen as the chancellor. But the problem is that von Papen was not able to garner the support of the Reichstag, and therefore the Weimar government by and large remained weak. But Hindenburg still refused to consider Hitler's demands. He felt that Hitler was a little too dangerous and unstable and should be prevented from taking power. Von Papen told Hindenburg, look, okay, we have no way out because we need to find a solution, so let's just put Hitler in power for now. Okay, and let's make sure that we keep an eye on him so that he cannot do anything against us. And Hindenburg very, very reluctantly agreed. So on January 30, 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor. Hindenburg and von Papen, they were both hoping that they can control Hitler, but as we know today, that's not what happened, and it had been a huge mistake on Hindenburg's part. Last reason, okay, use of propaganda. This is a man that we need to know. Okay, Joseph Goebbels will be Hitler's most loyal follower, and he's also what we call the Minister of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. Okay, just look at the way they phrase their own ministry, right? It sounds so facetious. And propaganda is the use of the media to aggressively promote one point of view. So Joseph Goebbels will be in charge of having propaganda of all sorts to make people support Hitler. Okay, what we see here are some examples of propaganda. Okay, you can see work and bread, Nazi Party election poster from the early 1930s. In other words, they are saying, I will give you work and bread, so vote for me. Okay, and on the other side, we see the Nazis' desire to break the shackles of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, propaganda posters tend to be very exaggerated. So you can see the idea or the message that the Nazi Party is trying to give the average German on the ground, that they will solve the problems of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, radio, posters, swastika flags, badges, and slogans, and all kinds of different mediums were used to encourage voters to support the Nazis. This is a very, very typical site of a mass rally that was held. Okay, you will see thousands and thousands of people all just queuing up, waiting to hear Hitler speak or even watch Hitler walk down that aisle that you see there. So, with that, we have come to the end of this part of the chapter. I throw back the question to you. What really led to Hitler's rise? Was it favorable circumstances? Or was it his own leadership abilities? Or was it even a mixture of both? Okay, so I'll see you in the next lesson. Till then, bye-bye.